That sound means we're online, and so are you. I spoke to Alley Marsh in this episode, who's a good friend of mine, and we discussed setting boundaries and healthy habits for digital work-life balance. I know I deal with this all the time, and I think anyone who's listening to this will relate because our lives are constantly connected. Whether it's work, whether it's personal, it is just an ever-present feature of the 21st century. And setting boundaries, I think we all know, is important, but is incredibly hard. So I hope this helps. What did that oh shit moment look like for you when you realized you needed to start setting better boundaries for your online life? Where were you? When was it? What happened?
Maybe a couple months ago. I was about a month into my new job, and I had just come off the back of not working for 2 months. And I'd spent a lot of my time in that off period, like curating a routine for what my life would look like if I had a job or not, like really doing the basics of like the morning and the evening space. And had like convinced myself that I would go back into work and just slide the job into that 9 to 6 gap that I had like left otherwise for chores and activities and things like that. And I was about a month in, and I found myself just ever so slowly having that digital creep where I'm supposed to only start work at 9, but the laptop's open, the Slack is pinging by 8 a.m, the emails are coming through, I'm already thinking about my candidates and stuff from 8 a.m in the morning. And then being like looking up at my laptop and being like, oh yeah, I was supposed to like go to the gym an hour ago and I'm still here online. And I realized that like the boundaries that I'd set for myself and I'd worked so hard on had completely just slipped away. Like it took 4 weeks back in the working world, and here I was doing all of the bad habits that I'd spent the last 2 months trying to unlearn. And that was a big moment for me where I was like, oh fuck, okay, I'm back here. We haven't really learned anything, or we're not applying anything that we've learned. Like, this is not sustainable. I can't burn out a month into a new job, right? So that was the moment for me where I was like, something's got to change.
And what was the single most impactful shift for you before and after that moment? So like in terms of how you spent your time digitally, what was the biggest thing that changed after realizing that?
I realized that the more time I spend in the working ecosystem of my day, when it gets to the end of the week, you almost feel like, what the hell have I done other than just work? Like it was really hard to think like, what have you done this week? I've just worked. Like, that's it. And I really was like, that's not the kind of life that I want to live. That's not how I want to look back at my story and be like, Monday to Friday was an 8 to 8 working world. Because very quickly you lose touch points of joy. Like for a lot of people, their work is joyous and you have moments of joy as well. But for me, and this is something that I very much learned from you actually, is around like, what are your values? And then making sure that you're giving enough time to each of those values to feel like they are actual values in your life. And if you're spending so much time on the work value, then the other values don't get fulfilled. And then eventually over time, you're just like, well, the only place that I'm getting dopamine from is my job, which then puts too much pressure on the job to be your only source of joy and happiness. And I realized like I cannot do this to myself. Like I have to actively carve out time that allows me every day to give a slither of my time to something else other than work.
Yeah, I find that any time I'm needing to log on to something to do it, in your case, it's a Slack, for example. I find myself as well that it's so easy to get sucked into it and not even realize you're getting sucked. It's like it's not like a physical force you feel where you can like put on the brakes pretty quickly. It's like a very slow process that tends to happen, and then before you know it, it's Friday 8 p.m. and you feel behind on your to-dos, or your chat with your mom is like unread at the end of the week.
So that's also a thing, is right, like especially in work that is quite high contact in terms of like there's being online, but then there's like being online and talking to people during that time as well. And that's my nature of work, is I've got the people that I'm working with, and then I'm talking to external people all day long, email, phone call, WhatsApp, the whole thing. And I realized that I'm using all of my verbal spoons for my job, that I have no verbal spoons left at the end of the day for the people that matter, right? Like my mom and my friends are getting a WhatsApp status that says slow to reply this week, because all my time and effort is dedicated to me responding to people for my job. And I just didn't want to be like that anymore. I just was like, I'm tired of using every last little bit of energy that I have for communication and connection within that space, that I've got no energy left for, maintaining really good communications with my friends and stuff. And so one of the big changes that I did, which helped a lot, was I go into London twice a week. And so I'm on the train from about 7 a.m. And I used to start work. I'd be like, oh, well, let's get a head start on this day. And, it's 7 a.m. I'm 2 hours before I'm even supposed to be online for my actual job. And here I am replying to candidates, scheduling interviews, messaging Slacks, like prioritizing my week. And I was like, what if we use these 2 hours to message our friends? What if we open our personal email for a change, and use the 2 hours of me literally just sitting here and invest that into personal admin, personal connection, responding to friends. And that made such a big difference just in my general life. Like knowing that every Tuesday morning and every Thursday morning, I'm going to get 2 hours where I'm literally doing absolutely nothing. And I can just reply to all of those messages. And because it's first thing in the morning as well, I've got that energy and like I'm excited for it. Whereas at the end of the day, I do have a natural tendency just to like, fall off the edge and be like, I'm too tired. So that was a big change. And it was because, and to not feel guilty about it as well. Like, you're not scheduled to work at 7 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday and Thursday. Like, that is not work time. Yes, it helps you feel like you're on top of work, but actually in the grand scheme of things, like using that time for the other values is more important by the end of the week, so that you can look back at it and feel like, yes, I've connected with my friends, I've connected with my parent, I've connected, and I've been able to like respond to very important personal emails, like please pay your water bill, and like, please cancel this membership, like all of those things that you end up just putting off because it's another bloody email, and I've used all of my spoons on the work ones. So that was a big change, and that really helped.
Just quickly, you mentioned spoons. What's the 30-second explainer for the spoon system before we keep going? So I think it is part of why you're so good at setting boundaries now.
Yeah, so spoon theory was actually invented by she was a psychologist who also suffered from a long-term health condition. And she invented this idea of spoon theory to basically represent how much energy you would have in a day, and that energy is finite. As somebody who has, long-term health condition, but it also now applies for people who are neurodivergent. And so if you have 12 spoons a day, for someone who is neurotypical, or for someone who doesn't have a long-term health condition, they don't even think about getting out of bed, making their bed, choosing their outfit, getting ready, Those are not spoons for people. They are spoons for me. So before 8 a.m., I've used 4 of my 12 spoons. But for neurotypical people, they don't even think about it. They can start their day with an endless drawer of spoons, whereas I have to be very selective over what spoons I dedicate to where. And when those spoons are done, there is no more spoons left. And what happens is you can borrow spoons from the next day if you really have to, if you start going into the drawer. But that means that the next day you start the day with less spoons. And so thinking of your time as something that is a finite resource as opposed to just an endless well of energy, it was huge for my boundary setting. And also in the way that I communicated with my friends, right? Like, being able to just say to the people that I love, I've run out of verbal spoons today. And that was because I've had 5 external calls, 3 internal meetings, and I've responded to over 100 emails. Like, the ability to talk to another human being is gone. But if you ask me on the same day to like do my washing or, clean the house, perfectly able. I've got loads of executive functioning spoons left. But if you ask me to get on a call with you and chat for an hour, I'm going to be nonverbal.
Very cool. I think that's very helpful and will tie in very nicely because I really want to zoom into some of the specific boundaries you set. But before we get there, I'm curious, like for you, what does a healthy boundary or a healthy habit look like when it comes to your time spent online?
So I'm going to try and just make this as applicable, like as tangible as what I've done in my life. But I have a work calendar and I have a personal calendar. And when they map together, I basically have my day mapped from about 7 a.m. until about 9 p.m. with relative levels of, shifting. But the ideal is that the job always sits in the 9 to 6, right? In terms of your calendar. And your before 9 and your after 6 always remains the same from your personal commitments. And that they if you have to shift something of work or whatever, then it needs to be responded to in the personal calendar as well. And so when I started really enforcing that my literal routines of what my morning routine looks like and what my evening routine looks like when I have work or not, really enforcing yourself of like when the work starts to creep, you're like, it's so easy to notice because I literally have it in my calendar like 8:30 till 9, eat breakfast. So that I'm not starting work then, I'm eating my breakfast. That's my breakfast time. Your work starts at 9. And the same at the end of the day, usually I have like start food prep for like dinner or I have an exercise class. And if my work goes over there, then I don't get to do my exercise class and I don't get to do my food prep. And I have spent such a long time building that pre and post work routine. And I know I can feel it in my body, mind, and soul when I start bleeding, when the work starts bleeding into my personal time. I can feel it at the end of the week. I felt like I've let myself down. I feel like I'm not living my true self. And so having those 2 calendars so that when work is done, you take the work calendar out and you just see your personal calendar and you've got the stuff that you want scheduled in, like food prep, dinner, clean up after dinner, turn electronics off, get in bed, ritual, whatever, breath work. Like it literally, I have it planned out. And some people think that's very overwhelming, but I find it incredibly comforting because I know every morning my alarm goes off at 7 a.m. I've got half an hour to get ready. Then I've got half an hour of journaling and gratitude. And then I've got half an hour of breakfast. And if I stick to that routine and I don't open my laptop, I don't look at my phone, if I don't engage with those things until 9 a.m., my morning has been preserved and and protected. It's as soon as I start going against that my boundaries are, I'm disregarding my own boundaries.
I mean, I think you alluded to it now as well, but my next question was going to be, well, put it this way, blocking time slots makes it very easy to see when a work activity bleeds into a personal activity. But then there are the more insidious boundaries that get broken, where like while eating breakfast you go down a YouTube rabbit hole, or while doing your workout you're actually 80% of your mental cognition is like texting, and like you're constantly doing this multitask thing. But it sounds like from what you said, those slots are also very offline intentional. Like you try to set those things as this is breakfast time, this is not phone time.
Yeah, so my laptop gets closed at like 9:30 p.m. at nighttime, and it sits on my desk. It doesn't come into my bedroom. And my phone charges on my desk, it doesn't come into my bedroom. I don't wake up to my phone alarm, so I don't have the temptation of pressing snooze or opening whatever. I have a Lumi in my bedroom that gives me a nice little tweet,
Not
tweet, tweet,
sponsored.
tweet, tweet. Yeah. Lumi, please sponsor me. And I wake up to the tweet, 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 and I go off and I turn the actual alarm off, right? And so that already was like a big shift in just, and then the first thing I do is I get out of bed and I go straight into the shower, right? And something that I've been trying to practice a lot recently is like, sometimes I'll wake up and the first thought I have in my head is about a candidate that I need to get back to, or a candidate that I have to respond to. And I will literally go to myself. It's almost like a talking meditation where it changes depending on how I feel, but sometimes I'll just be like thinking. Like I'm in the shower and I'm thinking of all these candidates, and I'll just be like thinking. I'll just like interrupt that thought pattern with a word so that I can't think about anything else other than that word, because I'm like, this is my time. This is my time. This is my morning, and I will not have the candidate email that I forgot to respond to last night interrupting that day. That email will be there at 9 a.m. and it'll be waiting for you. And it's really hard. Like, it takes a lot of effort. And it's not something that just like happened overnight for me. It's been very intentional and very slow to get to that point where I'm able to be like, I know that I need an hour and a half from when I've woken up to when I'm at my desk. I need that hour and a half of just me time. And I've seen the consequences of when I disobey that my own boundary. I've seen it. I've burnt out so many times in my life I can't even begin to describe. And so it's now the decision-making process of going, do I disobey my own boundary at the cost of my mental and physical health? Or do I obey the boundary that I've spent so long putting in place, knowing that that's what's going to protect me long term?
And perfectly segued off the back of that, because you and I both know that habits and boundaries are bound to break at some point, and they have, and they do, and they will. How have you learned to bounce back from a boundary that's been broken, or a habit that you've not been able to keep up? Because I think a lot of the time, and I'm going to use a very, very simple example, but an Instagram detox where you don't want to go on Instagram, and then you do, and then the thought comes of like, oh well, whatever, I've broken it, I've lost the streak, and then you slip into the very defeatist modus. How do you get out of that?
Yeah, so again, like I go back to my calendar, right? Like I track my time very meticulously so that I can look back at my week and see where I spent my time. So for example, on days where I started work at 8 a.m., I will move my work calendar to that 8 a.m. slot, and I will see that I disregarded journaling that day, that I didn't do my breath work that day. I will delete that slot so that I know that my calendar is always is Bible, right? Is the reflection. But as well as my calendar, I also journal. So every morning, every night, more often than not, that's what we're striving for, right? That's what routine is to me, is more often than not. Life is not perfect. Life is not linear. It's not straight. Like everything comes and goes. And it's taken me a very long time to be kind to myself when I'm not like perfectly regimented. But if it's more often than not, and if you are aware of what you're sacrificing and how many times you've sacrificed that in the week, then it kind of gives you that like added motivation to be like, okay, I want to fix this going into next week. And remember, like my week, that those things that I've got, they're consistent. So every single day in my calendar, I've got 7 a.m. wake up, 7:30 brush teeth, So it's always there for me to go back to. Like I know this is the routine that works for me. This is where I come back to. So it's almost like every week that comes back, you can be like, now it's a fresh start. Like let's try again. And I think this happens a lot, especially when like you go away for a week, or you go and stay at a friend for 4 days, or you just happen to be like maybe going to the office more than twice a week for whatever occasion, and then you're like, oh my god, my whole routine is ruined, I haven't done anything. And I have just been so much kinder to myself and being like, that's life. You're gonna go away for a week, and those routines and habits are going to be hard to maintain, but you can always start again. Like every Monday is day one.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with friends and family that you think might find it interesting too. And if you're feeling super nice, then leave a review. It would be super appreciated. And yeah, I'd smile a lot. But thank you, and hopefully see you on the next episode.